Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with a review and final diagnosis on the Zero Tolerance 0606 BLK or Black. I've had this knife now for a couple of months. If you go back on my channel, I had an unboxing and initial impressions video. I was really excited to get this knife. This is an R.J. Martin design knife, and it was one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen ZT create. I had the original 0606, and I was thrilled to find the all-black version for sale on Blade Forum secondhand at a very reasonable price. These were originally only sold in Europe and not in the US. Maybe they were sold in other countries, but basically everywhere except the United States. These were imported, and to import these, they pretty much cost around $800. I managed to get mine for a little bit less than that and was super thankful to get my hands on it. This is one of the most beautiful things I've seen ZT create, and I just wanted to know what it was like to own it and carry it. And so now that I've done that, I wanted to share those thoughts with you and give you my final diagnosis. So let's look at this knife objectively right here. Up front is a 4-inch blade of CTS XHP with 3.75 inches of cutting length, about 4.5 inches back to the pivot, 9 inches in overall length, 5 inches on the handle with a 4.5 inch grip area. So a very large knife in overall dimensions. I'll bring out another couple of knives for just a raw size comparison. Here is the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Here is my Zero Tolerance 0392, so a very big knife. Any knife that's bigger than the PM2, you're getting into huge categories here. And so this knife definitely falls into the huge category. Even ZT's most recent 4-inch knife here, the 0920, is still a little bit smaller in overall dimensions, particularly in the width as well, and we'll get to that number here in a second. I'll bring out one last size comparison, which is very similar in overall profile, the Shirogorov F3. That one is also a 4-inch blade with a rather thick handle. So the handle dimension here at its greatest thickness is actually quite impressive. The widest part is 611 thousandths, so well over half an inch. That's 0.6. That's among the thickest blades, the thickest knives that I've ever carried. And you've got 187 thousandths on the blade stock right there. So thick blade stock, thick handle, very large size, so you really need to understand what you're getting yourself into when you want to carry one of these things. Overall weight is also fairly heavy. I'm going to go ahead and get this on the scale here. The weight comes in at 6.45 ounces. So not only is it long and thick, it's also quite heavy. So certainly something to consider if you're wanting to pick one of these guys up. Let's go ahead and break this knife down anatomically. Up front is that beautifully harpooned, swedged blade of CTS XHP, and of course, in true ZT fashion, they covered it in all DLC, which completely ruins the blade to me because, to be perfectly honest, I'm a little bit OCD, like a lot of us are in the community, and I don't want to mess up my blade finish. I strongly prefer either a stone wash or a satin finish because I can usually clean off any marks that are made, but on DLC, even cutting through cardboard might leave permanent marks. So I hesitated to use this for any type of heavy-duty cutting. I never cut cardboard with this. I cut paper and I did some mild food prep with it just to see what would happen, but I really didn't use this knife very much because for a number of reasons. I actually wasn't able to customize the knife and I wasn't going to be able to take it apart to fix it. That we'll get to that, but that was another reason I didn't want to mess it up because I wouldn't be able to fix it down the line. So kind of a problem for me and a bit of an upset. The blade is absolutely beautiful and the edge came absolutely hair-poppingly sharp, just an incredible edge from the factory, so can't complain there. They do have a nice sharpening choil, so if you're into sharpening knives, you can sharpen this one and it will sharpen up nicely. XHP is a good steel. Moving back to the pivot, I had a couple of issues here as well. The hollow pivot, the pivotless pivot per se, that's developed by RJ and his son, Matt Martin, is a very cool novelty right here. But once you get over the fact that it's a hollow pivot, there are other knives that have hollow pivots, and it's really not all that exciting. What you realize is that the knife is completely not disassemblable because this pivot cannot be opened. I have tried some very light techniques to try to get this thing open without any help. I sent an email to RJ Martin saying, "Hello sir, I recently purchased this knife. Do you have any way to help me open it?" And he said, "Don't open it." And that was the end of his email. So that wasn't very cool. And then I emailed and spoke to ZT. I actually spoke to ZT over the phone a couple of times, and they only have two of these tools to open this pivot in the world. They're not willing to let me use it. They're not willing to sell it to me. And they're not willing to let me send them this knife so that they can disassemble it, send it to me, let me modify it, and then reassemble it. They're not willing to do that. So basically, this is a completely locked-in knife. I cannot open this thing up, and I'm not about to make some sort of garage tool right now to try to open this, because all I'm going to do is scrape off the DLC that's all over this thing. Another problem, it's coated in DLC, so of course if I try to open it, it's going to just have tamper marks all over it. So that's just a done deal. To make matters worse, not only is the pivot unopenable, but it runs on these nylon washers. And to be honest, over time, the action has smoothed out, but this is never going to be as smooth as even a ZT that runs on these metal caged bearings. These knives attain a level of smoothness here. The 0920 is a perfect example of this, of just guillotine drop shuttiness. And this knife is just never going to get there. Those nylon washers with the bearings in them always have a little hint of some resistance. I felt it on the Southern Grind Penguin as well. It's just not quite as nice as you want it to be. So the pivot, after you get over the novelty of the hollowness, is just another pivot, and you can't open it, and it's a little bit slower than it should be. So it's kind of a letdown. So that kind of adds to my final diagnosis problem here. So moving back to the handle, this has got to be my favorite part of the knife, mostly because they're so nicely ergonomic. This has got to be one of the nicest handles ever to come out of ZT for its ergonomics. Fits beautifully in my hand. That jimping I'm in love with up top. It's just very comfortable in the hand. I think I didn't like it initially on the original 606, but I've learned to love it now. It's comfortable, but it's also functional. The fingers fit into all these grooves quite nicely, and the swell fills the hand very nicely. There are no real hot spots when holding the knife or using the knife. One thing that they could have done is maybe milled out the inside a little bit. They didn't do any internal milling on this knife. That may have been something that they came up with a little bit later. Certainly in the 2017 knives, they've done an amazing job of milling out the insides of these things, so maybe it was just ahead of the curve before they really learned how to do that well. Taking an ounce off of this would have helped it tremendously. So let's talk about the absolute worst part of this knife, and that is the pocket clip. This is one of the worst pocket clips I've ever experienced, hands down, and that's for a couple of reasons. Well, number one, the pocket clip is 3D milled, and so as sometimes happens with these 3D milled clips, it's overly rigid. They did not mill enough of the titanium out or cause enough spring. I can't even do this on the camera. Like, I'm trying to pull on this and there's no spring. This might as well be as rigid as it could possibly be. So there's no flex to it. Moreover, there's not a very good ramp to it right there. There's only a very small area where you can put your pant material or pocket material or whatever into that space. And so you have to come at it at a very specific angle and then push very hard on your pocket or on your waistband to get this to work. And it definitely left marks on my pants, and it chewed up my pants. In combination, they put the clip right over a rather sharp and very large lock bar relief cutout. So look, right where that the lock bar relief is and right where that clip touches, basically your pants are going to get bunched up in there. You're going to have to pull really hard on the knife and then pull your pants downward in order to get it out. And it's a very sort of acrobatic procedure in order to even just remove this from the pocket. And so that's not very cool to me. So what do I think of this knife overall, and what is my final diagnosis? Well, I'm going to say my final diagnosis is too tactical for school. I know that's a ridiculous thing to say, but you know what I mean when I say something is tacticool. It's got all these features that make it look cool but may not help it function. The black blade makes it a little bit less functional in my honest opinion. XHP is a stainless steel. Why do you need DLC all over it? The cool pivot ultimately becomes one of the biggest failures that I've seen because I can't fix this knife up the way I want to. And this milled clip that's all black as well is just not ideal, and it barely even functions at all as a clip. So this knife is not ideal for my carry, and because I've stopped carrying it, essentially, this is going to be moving on to a new owner. So tell me what you guys think of this knife down below. Even though it is spectacularly beautiful, it is not a user, and so I'm not going to be keeping it. Go ahead and follow me on Instagram at Dr. Frunkey. Click like and subscribe to my YouTube channel here. And as always, guys, take care.